If I told you a few years ago that 2 horror movies made by YouTubers were going to both beat a Star Wars movie at the box office, you would have called me crazy. But that is exactly what has happened with the release of Obsession and Backrooms. Star Wars made its grand return to the big screen after a 7-year hiatus with the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu, a movie continuation of the Mandalorian Disney Plus series. Now, Star Wars has been on the downswing for quite some time now, only really having an upswing with Andor, a show so good I'm shocked it even exists. But even so, Star Wars should always be considered a guaranteed box office success, but times have certainly changed. The Mandalorian and Grogu grinded to a halt at the international box office, while people in droves went to see 2 horror movies made by first-time directors. So in this video, I'm going to go over how this happened, what it means for the film industry at large, and any other implications that this will have. First, let's look at the 2 films that did it, Obsession and Backrooms. I won't get into spoilers for those who haven't seen it yet, but I do think you should go see both of these movies. Now, these 2 movies aren't necessarily the best movies ever, but they're fun films that feel fresh, and that is the most important thing here. Starting with Obsession, it's a movie about a guy named Bear who has feelings for this girl Nikki, but he can't bring himself to tell her. He gets a knickknack from a psychic store called a One-Wish Willow, and with it he wishes for her to love him more than she loves anybody else in the world. And to his surprise, it actually works, and Nikki falls in love with him. But things end up being not as glamorous for Bear in this situation as he probably hoped for, and this love ends up becoming obsession.
He said it!
And Nikki seems more possessed than like her actual self. Hijinks ensue as Nikki goes batshit crazy, and Bear makes some poor decisions driven by denial and willful ignorance. Now, a crazy girlfriend horror flick isn't exactly the most original idea ever, but the way that this movie does it makes it feel fresh. It's a pretty modern feeling film with characters that can resonate with the Gen Z audience without feeling forced or cringy, and that's because it's made by actual Gen Z people who know how these people work and talk. Honestly, that's really the key to making movies for the younger generations. It's not pandering to them or throwing in Gen Z slang or memes or whatever the fuck studio heads think that these people like. It's by making relatable characters made by Gen Z people. Bear is the perfect example of a shy guy who doesn't know how to share his feelings for someone, instead opting to only talk about it with his friends and himself, when in reality he's missing out on people he could potentially be dating. But the main thing that's important about this character is the fact that he is such a coward. It really is a cautionary tale about why being this shy and cowardly can get you into bad situations. Obviously not situations that are as crazy as this, but still. And the actress that plays Nikki, Indy Navarrete, is the breakout star of this movie.
No, don't do that! I thought we were having a nice day!
We are.
Why does it matter? I thought we were having a nice day!
We are.
Indy does an amazing job playing the crazy girlfriend character. She is straight up freaky, from the way she talks, her facial expressions, to the way she moves.
I'm sorry.
You're scaring me!
It really makes for a truly haunting performance that is incredibly memorable. And boyfriends everywhere have her to thank for giving girlfriends the idea to do this face. Thanks for that, Indy. My girlfriend has been practicing it, and she is getting better. But these 2 characters really drive the movie, with the side characters being strong but not as interesting, offering the story different perspectives on what Bear is doing and the decisions that he's making. And that also makes the audience think deeper about this as well, and it's really good to see that the writers actually took their time to show these different perspectives so that the audience would have more to think about. The story is paced really well, the shock value is great, the scares are really good. Director Curry Baker, a guy who was making comedy skits on YouTube and TikTok before this, did a really good job making a tight, fun, and memorable horror movie. And on a budget of $790,000, it's insane that this movie ended up being this good. Moving on to The Backrooms, I will say it's definitely the weaker of the 2 in my opinion. These 2 movies are getting bunched in with one another a lot because of their similar production paths, which is fair, but in terms of overall quality, I do think Obsession is quite a bit better. But that doesn't mean that Backrooms doesn't have some good stuff to offer itself. Overall, I did enjoy my time with it. It has flaws for sure, but the things it needs to do well, it does well. The Backrooms themselves are very cool. It's a very eerie place, a confusing place. A place that doesn't make sense is one that mimics our world, but things are off. Now, I haven't watched any of the YouTube short films that Kane Parsons made before this movie, nor do I know any of the lore besides just the basic concept of the Backrooms, but I think they nailed the actual concept of the Backrooms as an interesting place that you want to be at for the majority of this movie. The set design is the strongest part about this movie, I would say. All the half sunken in furniture is really cool. The awkwardness, the uncanniness of each room, it's really cool, and the best scenes in this movie are the characters exploring it. I also really love the use of found footage in this movie. They use it sparingly, using it to show the characters filming themselves exploring. It's cool to see these environments in both a regular shooting style and a found footage style. Gives the movie a nice edge that you don't always get. This movie looks great, it looks very cool, all the way from the set design to the cinematography. It's very clear that Kane Parsons, or Kane Pixels if you're one of his subscribers, really focused a lot on the style and overall look of the movie, and it really shows through. However, this movie's definitely not without its problems. Firstly, the characters. They're really not particularly interesting. It seems like the movie tries to develop them early on, but never really capitalizes on the things it sets up. There's only a small handful of characters that appear, with most of the screen time being dedicated towards Clark, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, and Mary, played by Renate Reinsve. And they both do a good job acting-wise. It's kind of a crazy combo with a 20-year-old first-time director getting 2 Oscar-nominated actors as his 2 main characters. But the characters themselves just aren't that interesting. At first, it seems like Clark has an interesting backstory, but they don't really do much with it. And when they do, the big character moments kind of feel unearned, and you don't really empathize with them as much as I feel like the movie wants you to. Same with Mary, it feels like there's more to her character with her backstory being revealed as well, and you think it might connect in some way, but they just never really capitalize on it. It kind of felt like they made the backstories just to have them instead of having it connect to the story in any meaningful way. Then there's the monsters, and I can't explain the monsters without spoiling the movie, but I will say that I wasn't super into it. Some of the side monsters are cool from a character design perspective, but with the main monster, it just didn't do much for me. The monster wasn't as imposing as I wanted him to be. There's also some dumb horror movie cliches. I won't give away anything too much, but I will say that a character is getting chased and then hurts themselves on a couch, of all things. But overall, I thought The Backrooms was a cool movie that took a niche internet story and turned it into a pretty palatable movie. And being done by a 20-year-old who somehow got A24 to give him $10 million to do it, that's an amazing feat. And a pretty impressive directorial debut. And I mentioned the budget of each of these movies because it's a very important part of this equation. Each movie was made with a production budget that is way under what most movies are made for nowadays. Obsession, for example, being made for under $1 million is just absolutely bonkers. And while Backrooms had over 10 times that budget with $10 million, it still pales in comparison to the $166.4 million that Disney spent on Mandalorian and Grogu. A movie that I haven't seen yet, but from what I've seen, I know exactly what it is. And I'm sure it's fun, but nothing about this movie interests me. As I said earlier, Star Wars has been on the downswing for a long time at this point, and I actually do have a bit of faith in the future of it with Dave Filoni taking over. This movie to me feels like one of the last remnants of the Kathleen Kennedy-led Star Wars era, which just killed any momentum this franchise had. Say what you will about Dave Filoni, but that man knows Star Wars. He did make Clone Wars after all. This movie just feels like a cash grab to squeeze any juice the Mandalorian still has. Basically, Disney wishes that every kid would go up to their parents and go, "I want to go see the Mandalorian and Grogu!" And while those kids do exist and people do still like Star Wars, this movie in particular just feels unauthentic, corporate, and a remnant of a time where these kinds of movies were all that studios were making. People just simply don't care as much anymore. The 2010s were full of movies with interconnected universes, with movies that exist just to get a character with another character, and just basic and boring writing that simply existed to get these characters on screen. And it just got boring. I'm certainly burnt out from it. I just don't care anymore. I am not excited at all for Avengers Doomsday. Am I gonna see it? Probably. But still, like, I feel nothing when I think about that movie. People just got really burnt out because of what studios like Disney were doing with these blockbuster movies. Everything that these types of movies have been over the last 15 years has just gotten overplayed, and they feel very, very bland. Everything is so predictable, characters are all the same, and studios are making the same thing over and over and over again. They made a live-action Moana 2 years after Moana 2 and only 10 years after the original Moana. Why does that movie exist? And I've felt for a while that most blockbuster franchises just don't feel interesting anymore, and I know I'm not the only one. Obviously, there will always be slop, and slop will always reign supreme. And Obsession and Backrooms aren't going to completely change the industry or make studios be smarter with what they're releasing. But the more movies like this exist, the more chance there is of that actually happening. The more chance that it will change how studios think of things. There has been some waves made because of these movies, and the money is certainly doing the talking for both of them. Obsession is the 7th highest grossing film of 2026, making $442 million as of recording this video, and Backrooms isn't far behind at 9th place, making $384 million, being A24's biggest success. Now both of these movies are going to lose out to Odyssey in like a week, so just bump Obsession down to 8th and then Backrooms down to 10th, but still, top 10 for both of them. That's pretty crazy. These movies are extremely successful on such small budgets, and it's really telling. The movie industry is in a weird spot right now, with budgets being super inflated and a lot of movies just not being able to make the money back. And it's just shocking how low effort a lot of these blockbusters seem with that big of a budget. You would think that the big company putting $100 million plus into a movie would do their best to make that movie as good as possible, or at the very least put more passion into it than the movie with only $790K. Now of course the reason for that is the more money is put into a project, the wider the audience has to be, but still, some of these budgets are just insanely bloated. Movies should not have to make $500 million to be considered successful. The movie industry isn't in a risky place right now because of people not going to theaters or streaming or any one of the many reasons that studios want you to believe. Those things do matter, but the main thing is these movie studios putting the entire GDP of smaller nations into a movie that nobody asked for in the first place and wondering why the fuck it didn't make a profit. Obsession has ended up being one of the most profitable movies in a long time, and Backrooms is one of A24's greatest successes. Now the Backrooms I would say was a bit more of a sure thing success-wise because it already had the internet presence of the Backrooms and the backing of A24, but Obsession was not a sure thing at all. Obviously marketing isn't included in the budgets that we see either, but a lot of the marketing for Obsession seemed pretty organic. I didn't see a ton of ads for the movie aside from a few on TikTok a few weeks before the movie came out. It's incredibly impressive, and these movies prove something that I've been thinking about for a while now, that the movie industry has gone in the wrong direction, and the times of big, bloated, franchise-driven movies is starting to show real cracks. And the more those cracks show, the more we can get smaller, more authentic, artist-driven movies that will be successful not because they're based off of some franchise, but because they're good and offer something new. And that will save the movie industry. Of course, Hollywood is going to learn nothing from this and probably just hire a bunch of YouTubers to make horror movies, and some of them are going to suck. In fact, most of them probably will, but fuck it, let it ride. I'd rather see people like Drew Gooden waste Hollywood's money than see another fucking Marvel movie.